Good evening, everyone.
Board?
People do it for sure. It's crazy. That's 21. So you can make it with that.
We good?
Okay, Mr. President.
We're good?
Yep.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome to our January 10th Portsmouth Town Council meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for the men and women serving in harm's way. So we could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all. And to gonna be a little bit different tonight. This is our first hybrid meeting where we've got counselors remote, folks remote. I'm assuming we have some, well, I know we have some counselors in the council chambers, and there may be some participants in the chambers. So we're going to do our best tonight to get through the meeting efficiently. So I do ask for your consideration here as we try to get through this. I unfortunately could not be at the council tonight due to some health restrictions. So I'm remote to keep everyone safe. Before we begin, we do have to go through our evacuation procedures. So Mr. Hamilton, in the event of an emergency, could you explain to folks how to exit the building?
Absolutely. In the event of an emergency, if you would please get up in an orderly fashion and carefully either exit the door you came in, the one in the back corner behind you, or there's a door over here. We'll all exit the building and meet across the street at the school administration building and wait for help to arrive, or jump in your car and stay warm.
Well said, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you. And now I'd like to turn it over to our town clerk to take the roll call.
Ms. Ujafuza?
Here.
Ms. Abbott?
Here.
Mr. Hamilton?
Present.
Mr. Katzman?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Dr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Aguirre?
Here. Thank you all. Okay, and again, this is a hybrid meeting, so we do have folks participating via Zoom or possibly calling in on their phone. If you are participating via Zoom, there is an icon with a hand to indicate you have a question. If you're calling in on your phone, it's *9 will indicate that you have a question. *6 will allow you to mute and unmute your phone. I do ask that anybody participating remotely or in person at the council chambers, when you get up to speak, please state your name and address clearly for the clerk. And with that, we will begin our meeting. As prior to tonight, under the President's executive summary, we did have an executive session where we discussed the potential litigation under Rhode Island General Law 4246 5A2. And at this point, one vote was taken. So now we will move on to our consent agenda where we have bills and CRMC cease and desist order.
Mr. President, I move the consent agenda. Be approved as presented.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Muted. Unmute.
She's getting there.
I know the feeling.
Can
You
you
know,
hear
it's
me?
Mark's that cozy place next to the fire.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
We got you now.
painfully.
Hi.
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
I don't, Ms. Abbott, were you able to hear?
I think she appears frozen.
Okay.
Oh,
No,
there
she's
she,
moving.
Oh, now she's moving.
Daniela, can you hear the meeting?
I can, yeah.
Okay, there's a motion and a vote.
Oh, I didn't hear my name. Sorry. Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye, motion passes 7-0. So we are a little bit rusty. We will, again, we'll take it slow and we will get through this. I appreciate everyone's patience and understanding. Okay. Next, it's a continuation. We'll be sitting as the Building Code Board of Appeals. This was a continuation from our December meeting. And just to refresh, we have an appeal, or we have a request for clarification as to the necessity of installing a laboratory and OWTS, which is an on-site wastewater treatment system, for a structure at 3055 East Main Road. It is our challenge as the Building Code Board of Appeal to render a determination, but the request, and just give me 1 second here. The request was for Aquidneck Light, was requesting clarification from the Building Code Board of Appeals, which is us, as to whether installing the laboratory and OWTS is truly necessary for the structure at 3055 East Main Road. Just for everyone's knowledge, the building code requires, a bathroom and a septic system for all dwellings or structures built. So I believe what the petitioner is asking here is for a determination as to whether or not that is truly necessary under the building code. It's my understanding from guidance from the solicitor that the council, in order to, make a determination on clarification as to whether it's truly necessary, is that the enforcement of the provision, the code provision in this case, would do manifest injustice, and 2, that the decision to grant a variance or modification will not conflict with the general objectives of this code. So under part 1, the manifest injustice, I didn't know what that meant, so I did have to look it up. And that is, essentially means obviously unfair. So the requirement to install a septic system and lavatory would be unfair for the building. And also that if we were to grant that, we're saying that the requirement for the lavatory and septic system would not conflict with the general objectives of the building code. So that's just kind of a refresher for where we're at. At the last meeting, we did hear from Mr. Pites on his request. He did explain, his case. And at the time, the council had asked for some additional time to consider and kind of get educated a little bit, because we really are not professionals with respect to construction and building code standards. So we just wanted to, make sure we understood everything moving forward. At this point, I'd like to ask if any counselors have any comments or questions based on what our objective is here tonight.
Mr. President.
Yes.
As this is stated, again, it is just a request for clarification, which I believe you just gave to the end user, to me. Looking at this, I believe it does need a bathroom and on-site police water system, because it is going to be a functional building with people working in it. The problem with the way it's listed again on the agenda, it does not allow us to render a decision to give to the entity. So we, again, tonight can't say the council has decided, or excuse me, the building code board of appeals has decided that you do A, you have to put it in a bathroom, or B, you do not, based on our clarification, because it's not written there on the agenda again. My personal thought is that it does need to have a bathroom. It's a functional building. People could be working in there for multiple hours, and it's not right to say, well, they can just walk down the street to Dunkin' Donuts or Cumberland Farms or drive home.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Any other counselors have any comments or questions?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I believe that even though Mr. Pites might have misworded what his request is, that we don't need to drag this out anymore, and we should make it clear that it does not appear he's met the legal standard to essentially get this variance. He does not show manifest injustice, nor does he show that granting the variance would not be contrary. It's a double negative, but I guess consistent with the intent of the building code. Also, I've been informed that if we do grant this request, the variance would travel with the property. So should Mr. Pites no longer be occupying that building, the next owner could potentially not have to have a bathroom either. And that doesn't seem to, and that's not something we can do anything about. Like once we approve it, it goes with the land. So I would like to just say that I also agree that he does not qualify for having this variance. And although I certainly appreciate all his work trying to improve internet services through Aquidneck Light.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ujifuza. Are there any further comments or questions from counselors? Okay, I would like to add also that I also agree with my fellow counselors here. I do feel that from a straight clarification standpoint, that I feel that it is required, and that the two standards that we would look at, the manifest injustice, would be unfair. I don't think it's unfair. I think that it's necessary in all commercial and residential buildings in the town. And I also feel that it, by doing something other than putting that in would be a conflict with the building code. So, that's my clarification, is that I disagree, and I conclude that these systems should be installed. If nothing else, I think we could, in order to maybe put this to closure, we could all vote. Could we vote that just on the clarification that it is required, because he's asking for clarification as to the necessity of installing the lavatory. To me, I feel it is that it is required, and it.
Yeah, Mr. President, if I may just,
Mhm.
thank you. First of all, I want to thank the town solicitor for providing the information. At the last meeting, we had moved to postpone the decision because we didn't necessarily have all the knowledge of what the criteria were for our decision-making. And while the solicitor at that meeting did make some reference to manifest injustice, the citation statute and the other materials are very helpful. And yeah, I think that I would make a motion that it is the consensus of the council to provide a clarification that installing of an on-site and OWTS for the structure at 3055 East Main Road is required.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
I'm trying to.
Oh.
I'm trying to grasp, maybe Kevin, Gavin, Is this vote is this kind of properly advertised for this vote? And also, does the.
Well, as the motion was worded, excuse me, sorry.
And does the building code board of appeals do we just handle appeals, or are we handling clarification?
Well, you can appeal an interpretation of the building official and rule that the official was wrong in interpreting and applying the building code. I don't think there's any evidence that that's the case in this situation, or a person can ask for a variance in the standard being, as has been mentioned, the manifest injustice, and that it's inconsistent with the general objectives of the building code. I mean, as the motion's worded, you're providing clarification that yes, you need to install the lavatory. You can leave it at that, but I think that the agenda item is sufficient to treat it as a request. To the extent it's a request for a variance from the code, I think you could treat it as such and vote to deny a variance. But I think that as the motion is phrased, if you voted on that, I think that pretty much answers the question and the request for clarification. So I think you can act, I don't think we need to continue it another month.
Well, he's not asking for a variance. He's asking for clarification as to whether it's necessary to install. And so,
Okay, I mean, implicitly, I think asking for a variance, but okay, just provide, then if you vote on the motion, you're providing clarification that yes, you need to put it in the bathroom.
Right. Okay. So does that answer your question, Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms.
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Nay.
Dr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye. Motion passes 6-1. Okay. Now we need a motion to adjourn from the Board of Building Appeal.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Mr. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have minutes and as well as a exec from our December 13th meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Mr. Jukusa?
Dane.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye. Motion passes 6-0 and 1 abstention. Okay. Moving on to our town administrators report. Mr. Rayner?
Good evening, Mr. President, town council, ladies and gentlemen. The town of Portsmouth has teamed again with Raytheon Integrated Defense Systems to use its Portsmouth facility to serve as a COVID-19 booster vaccine point of dispensing or a pod clinic. The town will offer booster vaccinations for all eligible 12-year-olds and older on the next 2 Fridays, that is January 14th and January 21st from 4 to 7 p.m. Other clinics at the Raytheon facility will be scheduled based on the public's response and the need for additional clinics to help increase the number of people with COVID booster vaccinations. The appointments are recommended, but we will take walk-ins based on the vaccine supplies that are available. To go ahead and schedule a shot, just go to the vaccine or vaccinateri.org website. That's vaccinateri.org and search for Portsmouth and make an appointment. In regard, Mr. President, to the damage and follow-on restoration of Fairview Lane and the Melville Dam spillway due to Hurricane Ida, we have been informed by FEMA that the thresholds for reimbursement were not met. The cost for repairs were $496,657 for Fairview Lane and $24,830 for the Melville Dam spillway, for a total of $521,487. We will monitor overall spending throughout this budget cycle, and we will approach the council as needed if we cannot meet the overall budget. We're not asking for any action at this point. With regard to the audio-visual upgrades in the chamber, that equipment has arrived, and the project is scheduled to begin January 26th and run through February 2nd. Training for staff will be conducted on February 7th. With regard to our search for an information systems manager, a second round of interviews for an information systems manager has been conducted, and I will meet with the interview panel to select a candidate this week. And then I will report my recommendation to the council at your next meeting. And lastly, the submission deadline to file an audit report with the Office of the Auditor General was extended to January 14th. The extension was due to the fact that we were awaiting state approval of the town's Municipal Transparency Portal 2, the MTP2 report. The Division of Municipal Finance at the Rhode Island Department of Revenue has since reported that they've approved the report, and I anticipate that the audit report will be posted to our website and filed with the Auditor General no later than tomorrow morning. In fact, actually, as I was walking in, the file has been filed with the Auditor General, so we'll make sure that it does get posted to our website in the morning. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Okay. We are moving on next to our resignations and appointments. Our first item is the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission.
Move to approve, Ms. Andriolo.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Mrs. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have the Design Review Board. There's 2 vacancies, 1 applicant.
Move to approve, Mr. Lorenzo. Second.
Okay, Mr. Hamilton is first, Dr. Ryan is second.
All right. Even with the delay,
Yeah.
all those in favor?
Mrs. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have the Housing Authority.
Mr. President, I move to approve Ms. Patton.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Mrs. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have the Planning Board.
Move to approve, Mr. O'Connell.
Second.
All those in favor?
Mrs. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have the School Committee.
Mr. President, I am taken by the fact that we have only 1 applicant. Typically, when we advertise for an opening on the school committee, we have 3, 4, 5, 6 applicants. I believe that the timing of the announcement being just before the holidays and that it was briefly advertised did not generate the typical applicant pool. I would move that we re-advertise and hear this again at another time.
Second.
Do you want to put a time frame on that, Mr. Capson, for the clerk? Do we want to hear it at the next meeting, or you want to do the first meeting in February?
First meeting in February. That gives a full month.
That's fine.
Do we have a motion and a second? All those in favor?
Mrs. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have the West Side Development Advisory Committee.
Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that we request Mr. Rayner to give us a report about what the West Side Development Advisory Committee is supposed to do, and before we appoint anyone more to it. And I move that we table appointing anyone until Mr. Rayner can give us that report at the next meeting. So that would be my motion. I appreciate Mr. Lorenzo's application, but I do want to know what this committee is doing.
I'll second that, Mr. President, if I may make a comment. The Portsmouth Redevelopment Agency was established by the town council in conformance with state law many years ago was constituted to address a situation at that time relating to the Navy BRAC of property that would have required the involvement of that kind of agency. over time and circumstance, the things have changed such that the current West Side Development Advisory Committee is a remnant of that process, but I'm not sure what their mission going forward is consistent with what the town council needs in terms of input. I'd like some clarification on that, on whether it may have outlived its usefulness. If it's simply to advocate for types of things on the west side, then why don't we have an east side development committee and the south side and the north side? And I don't know that we need that. And that is why I support Ms. Uchifuji's motion for the town administrator to inform us on if there are particular circumstances that warrant the continuance of the committee.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Oh, hold on a second. There's a hand up from the attendee. I'm assuming it's Mr. Lorenzo. Even it says Nancy, but I'm assuming it's.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Paul Lorenzo.
Yes.
Hi, how are you? So
Good.
I'm a little curious as to what this board does as well, but I don't know why you wouldn't want to have me on this committee, on the West Side Development Committee. I'm a little confused.
Yeah, Mr. Lorenzo, if I may respond, I believe that you're an excellent candidate. I voted for you to be on the Design Review Committee. It is simply that I don't understand what this committee does as well, and I just want that clarification prior to continuing to appoint people. So it has everything to do with not understanding what the mission of the committee is, and frankly, not that much to do with your application for it.
It's
Okay.
fair to say that based on our report from the town administrator, if it is determined that the committee is viable, then, and we need to appoint someone, that would occur at our next meeting. So, Mr. Lorenzo, I just ask for your patience on this one, and let's see what happens at the report from the town administrator.
Okay, so you're thinking of maybe disbanding this committee. Is that what you're saying?
I just want
Sounds
to
like
know
we're
what
trying to
they're
get an
doing.
update.
But potential.
I couldn't hear that comment.
I said, but potential, that could be what the report would lead
Okay.
to.
Well, let's table this to the next meeting, and we'll address it then once we have a report from the town administrator. Okay.
So we just need to go through the vote.
The vote to table it, or, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Uchapuzas,
Aye.
Ms. Abbott,
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton,
Aye.
Mr. Katzman,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Dr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye, motion passes 7-0. Okay, next we have the Dog Park Committee, our reappointment.
Move to reappoint both Ms. Milton Seller and Ms. Rounds.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa,
Aye.
Ms. Abbott,
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton,
Aye.
Mr. Katzman,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Dr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye, motion passes 7-0. Next, we have the reappointment of Dave Gleason to the Glen Manor Housing Authority.
Move to reappoint Mr. Gleason to both the Glen Manor House Authority and the next appointment to the Harbor Commission.
Second, Andrew.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa,
Aye.
Ms. Abbott,
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton,
Aye.
Mr. Katzman,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Dr. Ryan,
Aye and aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye. That was that double vote. Motion only passes 7-0 though.
We weren't voting on two positions.
So it's 7-0 squared. Next, we have the tree warden reappointment.
Move to reappoint Mr. Fitzgerald.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. And finally, we have the wastewater appeals board reappointment to Peter Roberts.
I move that we reappoint Mr. Roberts to the wastewater advisory committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay. We are moving on to old business. First item is a monthly finance report. Ms. Lasky?
Honorable Council, the town is 1/3 through its fiscal year 2022. Year-to-date general fund revenues are at 35% of total budgeted revenues. Real estate transfer fees continue to outperform budget, along with related revenues, including building inspections and recording fees. Year-to-date general fund expenditures are at 34% of budgeted expenditures, slightly over budget due to the costs of the road improvements to Fairview Lane after the recent significant event. Despite these unanticipated road repair expenditures and not qualifying for the federal disaster relief, the town still expects to meet the overall budget target at this time, thanks to better than anticipated real estate transfer fees.
Thank you.
Motion to receive and place on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Mr. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay. Next, it's a request approval of an amount not to exceed $50,000 for legacy general contracting for repairs to the Glen Farm Stables Ice House.
Motion.
Woodhead?
Council President, members of the council, at the last council meeting, the council approved not to exceed $50,000 for the repairs to the Glen Farm Stables Ice House. I did get another quote, and I've attached that also too. And the lowest quote that we received was for Legacy General Contracting. And I would like to request the council to approve the amount not to exceed $50,000 for the repairs to the Glen Farm Stables Ice House.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, next, it's to reschedule the comprehensive plan workshop. This was on our agenda last time. And due to the modifications that are being made, the council chambers will not be available when initially anticipated for our meetings. What I'd like to do with the council tonight is discuss with some of the changing dynamics with COVID. This is a public hearing that we're trying to do for the comp plan. The comp plan has been a long time in the works, and I want to give the residents that opportunity to participate in the public meeting. I know we could do it via Zoom, but I'd also like to try and push this out a little bit to see if we can actually, have in-person meetings, for the comp plan public hearing process. Initially, we were looking at 3 nights. There's 12 sections. So, we would try to do 4 sections a night. I was just trying to get the council's position tonight. Would we be willing to push this out a little bit to maybe March and maybe take it instead of 3 nights in a row? Maybe we look at doing, a section, which would be four divisions, 1 week, give it a few weeks and do it, stagger it a little bit. So we're not trying to cram it all in 3 nights. Just looking for some feedback from the council so we could at least give the residents that opportunity. Some folks participated, and I'd like to give everybody that opportunity to do this in person. Mr. Castle?
Yeah, thank you for putting this on the agenda. I agree that this is updating the comp plan is something that's done only every 10 years, best case scenario. This has taken many years to put together. And if an in-person opportunity for hearings it can be done, then I think that would be better. Some as well as including, of course, as we have been doing, opportunity for remote participation as well. So I would, if you're looking for a consensus of the council, I'm in agreement with you that pushing the meeting off, I guess right now we're scheduled for the end of January, right?
It was supposed to be the first week of January. I'm sorry, February. Is that right?
Oh,
The 31st of January, 1st, 2nd of February, but that's when the AV's being upgraded here.
Right.
yeah, I would concur with your thought to move it into March and then over the course of a couple of weeks. Maybe more than just one meeting a week, but not necessarily 3 nights in a row.
Right. I mean, at a minimum, what I'd like to do is at least maybe set the schedule for at least we have our regular council meeting March 14th and then March 28th. So, if taking from the council's perspective, we've got the week of the 7th, the week of the 21st. If we wanted to do it that way, we could at least schedule it for at least the week of the 7th, maybe the week of the 21st.
Yeah.
And then get into April, because we also have budget coming up in, we'll be in the budget cycle as well.
That's okay.
Mr. President, I've had this in my calendar for, I think, a few months now. I know that the comp plan advisory group and the planning board has too. I would much rather keep the same dates and just move the venue.
Unfortunately, the high school is not available or the middle school. We tried looking at them all.
Right.
They all have things booked.
And I mean, my concern is really more about COVID and are people going to be willing to, right now we're spiking again. I'm speaking from experience, sitting here and quarantining. I just don't want to put people in a situation or not give them an opportunity because they're concerned about, COVID as well. And I just think if we can push this out a little bit, it may give everybody a little bit more sense of where we're going to be. I don't know where we're going to be in a month.
Right.
Case rates are so high in the state of Rhode Island right now. I can't imagine they're going to be worse in early March.
Right. I mean, I would, at a minimum, at least that, if we try to do it, alternating around the council meetings, that's an option for discussion.
I think I would prefer it all on a Monday night. It's easier for me to schedule work-wise. So those that the 4th, sorry, I have not. the 7th, the 21st, and the 4th of April.
Yeah.
And to me, that gives us the ability to do four sessions, listen to good commentary, we're not rushing through things, and then come back in 2 weeks with amendments based on commentary and move on to the next one. It's been a pretty deliberative process for the past 2.5 years. I don't think another month and a half is gonna change the direction of Portsmouth that much.
I think we're good on that. Yep.
So March 7th, March 21st, April 4th. Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. So do we need a motion? Oh, Mr. Crosby. Sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that if any of the counselors need to have a printed copy of the comprehensive plan, I'd be happy to accommodate.
Mr. President, I'm
Yes.
afraid I'll be attending a family wedding April 4th. So as long
Okay.
as we can attend, as long as we can have a hybrid meeting, I
Well,
just wanted to see if that was possible.
That is out of our control, I think. Right now, we're in hybrid, right?
no, it's-
I mean, we're in hybrid for the foreseeable.
Well, till
Future.
February 4th.
What's that?
February 4th right now is the governor's
Executive order.
executive order. It's
Oh.
through- So,
And that's gonna be based on caseload of COVID.
correct.
This isn't technically a meeting of the town council, is it?
It is.
It is.
Yeah, but if
Yeah,
I,
it's public hearing.
yeah, if Mr. But I could point out, just as someone mentioned before, you have a meeting and then there's some time in between, at which point amendments could be proposed to address the comments of the prior meeting or not, as appropriate. That just because we might have a hearing on April 4th doesn't necessarily mean that we will take action on what's heard that night. In fact, I would suggest that we don't, since this is a complex matter with a lot, right? So
Okay.
we'll have the hearing, we'll take input, and then schedule any at the next meeting.
Right, yeah, we won't. You're right, this is, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is we're gonna have the public hearing, close the public hearing, and then figure out where we're gonna go from there.
Maybe at the next council, at regularly scheduled council meeting.
Yes. Okay,
So what is the proposed schedule again?
March 7th, March 21st, April 4th. Which would essentially mean we're meeting every Monday night for 6 weeks in a row.
Okay.
Plus sprinkling in a couple of budget hearings in the month of April there too.
Well,
Okay.
that's what we signed up for. All those in favor?
So,
Is that a motion?
Do we need a motion?
I will make a motion that we schedule the public hearings for the comprehensive plan. Sections 1 through 4 on March 7th, sections 5 through 8 on March 21st, and sections 9 through 12 on April 4th, excuse me. Did I get them all, Gary, right? Just 12 sections.
Yes, that's correct. I'm sorry, let me see. Yeah, you can- yes, that's correct. I just want to make sure that one of the things that we tripped ourselves up with last time was whether we continue the meeting or whether we are able to. I don't want to, I think that we should not lock ourselves into saying that the public hearing is closed for sections 1 through 4, or
Right.
whatever as we go along, that the meeting is continued to the next dates until it's done.
Right. Yeah. No, I would agree with you, Mr. Crosby, that there's right now, we're just trying to set the meeting dates and
Yeah.
we'll make sure that the protocol and the procedures are in place so that we have, that we go through the process correctly and we don't
Right.
close the meeting until until we know we're at a point where we can close the public hearing.
Yeah, last time we were talking, the way we set it up last time was that we were going to have to sit there for a date, the last date, whether there was any comment or not. And I just wanted to make sure that we did it properly.
Okay. So we have the motion and a second.
Yeah, but to Mr. Crosby's point, the motion is to hear sections 1 through 4 on this date, motions 5 through 8 on that date. I think the motion should be revised to make it clear that it's just to hearing for the comprehensive plan. Because if there's no comments on sections 1 through 4 the first night, and somebody wants to talk about section 5, we could, or we have to just close the meeting.
So I'll amend my motion to be sections 1 through 4 on March 7th. Sections 5 through 8 and previous sections on March 21st and on April 4th, all sections. Does that work?
That works.
Could I say something?
Sure, Mr. Gavin.
I think what Gary's saying is if we restrict the discussion on each meeting, we lose flexibility to proceed. And if there's no comments and there's crickets, we said everyone has to go home and then come back because if it's advertised under the Open Meeting Act for just certain sections. So I think what Gary's saying is let's, schedule these dates for hearing and see how it goes and see how far we get.
But if there's somebody who has a particular want to speak to a specific section, they're gonna have to come to every meeting. If they just want to talk to section 12, they gotta sit here for potentially 16 hours of meetings to talk about just section 12. If we say we're specifically talking about 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12, people know when to show up and they say, I want to talk about number 9 because I got a real problem with number 9.
Oh yeah, yep. Oh, that's another way of doing it, but just to understand if that's how it's advertised, then the comments.
I don't think there's a chance we're gonna come in here and sit down and we're gonna go, okay, anybody have any questions on number 1? Crickets. Number 2, crickets. Number 3, crickets. Number 4, crickets. All right, we're out of here.
Yeah, no,
But I doubt it. It's not gonna happen. And the ability, as Mr. Casper mentioned, we'll leave the ability to talk about the current and previous sections. And then the last, everything's fair game. So if somebody, to your point, Mr. Gavin, if somebody wants to do that, they can come to the last meeting and talk about any section.
Right. Because I think we had this discussion before. I just wanted to say what I interpreted, Gary, what his comment was addressed to. But yeah, that's the way to go. I just want you to understand that it might, well, it might bring people out, and then it might bring the council out and have a meeting, and then not be able to proceed if the council would rather choose to move on through the plan. But that's fine. Just wanted to interject that.
We're gonna be here all 3 nights no matter what.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's how we've advertised in the past, so we're gonna be here for 3 nights, so we might as well at least have 4 sessions to do a night to give us something to do. Except Mrs. Ufusa is gonna be dancing it up in a way.
Okay. So we comfortable with the motion and the second?
Yeah, now.
All those in favor?
Mr. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzen?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay. On to new business. First item is our Solid Waste and Recycling Committee recommendations. Is I can't tell who's in the audience. Okay,
Dennis here is coming up.
all right. Okay, gotcha.
Gonna be a little awkward there.
That's
It's
all right.
okay, you can look that way.
We're all
You
about
can
awkward.
pick The rest of the council.
So my name is Igor Pete, I'm the chair. And
My name is Igor Slavicki, and I'm the vice chair of the solid waste recycling committee.
so we're just alternating. It's a pretty straightforward presentation. We can just jump in that slide, please. So I think the conversation, we should just preface that we just want to be very focused on what we're trying to achieve tonight. Is that the town council has it within its latitude to put out a scoping RFP for curbside services. And we'll get to that in a hot second. Just some background information is that we suffer from a lack of economy to scale enforcement. If you look at the stickers uptake in 2021, we only sold 2,284 stickers, and that number goes down every year. If we had that performance of only a third of the household enforcement buying a service that the town provides, that the school department, if 2/3 of the parent enforcement decide to send their kid to private school enforcement, I think we would have them deep thinking about what's going on here and why are people not choosing the public option. So that's just something I wanted to preface before we jump into that. And the other thing that really sticks out is that Middletown been able to control their costs. Their program is $141 per year, and it's been like that for many, many years. Fortunately, we're doing the best we can to control costs, but the nature of the system where not everybody is pooling into the municipal solution, and a lot of people are paying more to go on their own to hire a private contractor, just means that we're just spending more and more money out of our community. And that's something we just want to address head on. So I think that's the most important thing. And then the composting was something that came up a lot recently. And, you know, I will admit I'm a convert. I didn't really think much of composting, but then once you look at the numbers, we're talking about a quarter of our residential waste stream is being needlessly thrown away, and it could be diverted. And that's just making things cost more for everybody here in Portsmouth. Maybe go to the next slide, please.
So we're sort of making some formal recommendations. One is to retain pay as you throw. To give you some history on that, the recycling rate trend was around 20% back in 2017. And once pay as you throw was implemented in November of 2017, the rate rose, the recycling rate rose, and now it's consistently above 35%. And it's sort of the fairest way to share the cost of the program. As part of that, the recommendation, we would have the haulers flag contaminated recycling bins, either with a sticker or subtract some rejection rates. And the waste zero contract option expires in December of 2022, which is the end of this year. We're also recommending a town-wide curbside pickup. So we would expand the program to a small residential multi-dwelling units and use shift all the municipal solid waste and diversion programming to the tax base, which should model a switch to a town-wide curbside pickup. And we want to expand the program to municipal facilities, including Sandy Point Beach and facilities receiving civic support, like the Common Fence Point Community Hall and other town entities. We're also recommending a standalone composting solicitation and or an officially recommended solution to that. The take rate for composting is hard to project. And one recommendation is to have smaller drop-off points throughout the town, maybe let's say per neighborhood, rather than one huge drop-off, sort of like drop-off hubs. And we also want to explore options for the local diversion of yard waste versus transporting it to Ryrie up in Johnston.
Next slide, please. So this slide is more just for general awareness. Middletown contract is going to align with this July. That is an option, but we declined to make a formal recommendation at our 2021 meeting because it's still the unknown variable that will be involved at the extension. And something else to be aware of, the school department issued its own RFP for waste management services. I don't know at any point we could, dovetail
the contract, but I'm just making sure that everybody is aware of that. That's like.
The other thing to consider here is this is a diversion station, as to keep the transfer station operational, but rebrand it as a diversion station. One, that would extend the life of the landfill. Secondly, we would say to open the use of this diversion station to all residents of Portsmouth, and you would show your driver's license for the Portsmouth address to be allowed to use it. And the current, we would keep the current services there, but add the standing special collections such as bulky waste, e-waste, scrap metal, shredded paper, and TBD. Those things take place are in different locations in town right now, and so we just make sure that they all occur at the diversion station. The other nice thing about this thing, which is that it would mitigate illegal dumping, sort of eliminate barriers to for people to actually go and dump it, because the services would already be covered by your taxes. Yard waste option at the transfer station would be ad hoc, and for curbside yard waste, not year round. And we'd also have amnesty days for bulk items, so bulk waste items maybe 4 times a year, some kind of scheduled dates where you could bring in bigger items, say like a sofa or things like that. And specify in the bid for the diversion station some kind of optional coverage, maybe 10 to 20 hours. The example we give here is 16 hours coverage, which would be 8 to 12 on Saturday, 11 to 7 at night on Mondays, and 8 to noon on Thursdays. That's just an example. And currently the coverage at the transfer station is 48.5 hours.
So just a quick point about like the hour, why we just recommended 16, that's about a third of current hours. We don't know if it'll be fiscally possible. It's our hope that it would be fiscally possible, or any respondents to RFP, or that the town to find a creative solution to keep the station, or the station has a lot of popular services for diversion. The other outstanding recommendation is small housekeeping. We can just move on from that slide, except for the point that there are companies in Newport County that are very eager to help us with diversion and sustainability. We should really avail ourselves, especially at high profile events such as the Polo, and so the town can really say that this is important. At an official level, the town can just put a stamp and endorse sustainability. I think that would go a long way towards the messaging. Next slide, please.
And so we're proposing sort of the way ahead. November of 2021, we set the sticker pricing, and we can, at this point, we need to consider a mechanism to transition to the first 6 months of 2022 only, or to a curbside solution. December of 2021, review and update prior RFPs. Let's say, for example, the one from 2017. In January of 2022, advertise RFPs for townwide services, and we would recommend a separate composting RFP, as large haulers are not likely to respond to a composting option. So it would give them, I think that would give them large haulers more incentive to look just at a curbside option. February, March of 2022, negotiation and vendor selection. April, May of 2022, do some public education, which I think is important. Refresh the pertinent town website sections, including the FAQ, and utilize public resources posted by other communities to spread the word about the new program. June of 2022, delivery of the bins if the curbside option is selected. And 1 July of 2022, the current transfer station option expires, and we have a new contract in place. And just to review, the 2017 timeline was August of 2017. It was a special workshop, which a discussion of the Solid Waste Recycling Committee survey and presentation of the recommendations. In October of 2017, the town council selected a waste services contractor from bid results. And then in October 2017, the town council awarded the transfer station to, at that time it was J.R. Vinagro. It's now since been bought by, I believe, Waste Connections is the current administrator of the transfer station.
I think the point of the timeline in 2017 was that they were pulled together within 4 months. So I know that we have a lot of demand on town staff's time, and that kind of leads to the next slide, is that we're proposing 6 months for this time frame compared to 4 months in 2017. But the next slide is, we're here to help. The Solid Waste and Recycling Committee has very dedicated individual. Igor Slavicki has been a tremendous asset in terms of creative problem solving. We want to be a force multiplier for the Department of Public Works. We want to conduct our recommendations in a transparent way. We live here in Portsmouth, and we're very invested in seeing whatever is recommended or implemented by the town council to see. So we're invested. We're here to support you. We want to help, and that's what we would like to leave it. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Okay.
Thank
you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'm the liaison to the Solid Waste Recycling Committee. So I'd like to thank the chairman, Ted, and Ihor for the enormous amount of work they've put into this, and the amount of time and over the years they've put in this. I think after looking at their financial analyses, it just seems economically, going with townwide curbside is the way to go. It would seem, though, there's several different pieces that have to be figured out here. We would sort of need an RFP, I would think, for townwide curbside. We'd need a separate RFP for recycling organic waste. And then we would need some understanding of what the total cost of these things and how we could move them into the town budget if that's what we decide to do. So it sounds like there's several things we need to consider in this proposal, although overall I'm completely in support of of what Ted and Ihor are outlining here.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. We have Ms. Ujapuza?
Mr. President, given that we need to take a first step now because the contract is going to be expiring in December, I would make a motion that first step be that we have the town administrator fashion an RFP to find out how much curbside pickup would be for Portsmouth. And I believe if they can simultaneously look at working with Middletown to get a economies of scale, even cheaper rate. But that would be my motion. Let's start with that first piece of information we absolutely have to know before we make decisions about anything else. And that is, how much is townwide curbside going to cost us?
I would second that approach. The budget season we're about to enter into is going to be made up of many discrete pieces, and we can't make decisions without those pieces of information, and such as what it would cost to do one thing or another thing. In this case, what will pay as you throw actually cost. I also want to thank Mr. Pites and the committee for all that work. Just up at the top or bottom line, it looks like Middletown at $141 a year is paying less than Portsmouth, and yet have the service of curbside pickup. So if we could achieve something along those economies of scale, I think it would be a benefit to the residents of Portsmouth in savings and convenience.
President,
Yes.
when does the current contract run out, Mr.
They have 2 one-year extensions. The first 1-year extension expires June 30th. Second 1-year extension expires June 30th, 2023.
So we would have to figure out a way to weave this into a budget starting July 1st, 2023. So this would be
Yeah, I mean,
Next year's
obviously read through
budget
the
revision.
report, taking steps to see what is in the realm of feasible here. 6 months, I'll just be straight up, we can't do this in 6 months. Just the ordering of the bins, we'll put all that aside, but just getting the bins, a simple matter like that would take longer than 6 months. We would need at least 18 months to do this. The Middletown contract is expiring. We have talked with Middletown. They have a vendor who's going to advise them on the next step for them regarding the RFP process. We are going to also tag along that meeting to see what we can learn. And we'll report back to the council. But if my direction is to pursue this, we'll get started.
Well, I think last time we pursued both options, it was about $1.2 million to do curbside pickups.
Obviously the suggestion to put this into the tax base, roll this into the tax base, that would be quite expensive. Generally we try to keep the budget at no more than 2% growth. That equates to about $1.5 million. This would just about eat everything up.
Well, if we go back to I don't know if we're going to roll everything. We couldn't do it all in 1 year. It would have to be phased in over time, which means people would have to.
And would you see? And that's something to consider. And if that's something you really want to do, again, this Middletown has been able to keep their price at $141, which is not very far from what we would have done had we done this in 2017. And they've been able to maintain that price, but it's essentially an enterprise fund in Middletown as well. It's not in the tax base. But otherwise it operates fairly similar to what's being suggested here today. Curbside pickup, residents buy into the program. So they buy into the program instead of a sticker for a transfer station. They have bulk amnesty days, and they have special programs for you buy a pass or a sticker that you would apply to things that are outside the norm that you would put in your curbside. That would be picked up as well. So there's a lot to learn here. A lot of it can be resurrected from the work that we did a number of years ago. More than happy to research this, put together an RFP, report back to the council, but I think one of the councilors has stated, I mean, there's some questions that have to be answered here. It's hard to move forward until we know the prices.
Right. So if we're looking at roughly 6,700 households in Portsmouth, give or take, and doing curbside, plus we also have a special situation of curbside, which would be Prudence Island and Hot Island as well. And how we'd have to factor that in as well. But even if you took the 6,700 households, $550, that's $1 million. So if we charged every household $100 plus bag fees, that would roughly cover the cost. If we did pay as you throw.
Yeah, but then you're also, the math works, but that's if everybody does it. You would have to mandate if everybody does it the way other towns have done this. People buy in. So Middletown is not a mandate. There are residents in Middletown that choose to still have one contractor. I don't know why, because it comes out to about between $500 and $600 a year when they could get curbside for $141. But one of the things that we had to factor into the RFP last time was you have to guarantee you have to commit to a number of residents that will sign up to be part of the program, which is difficult to gauge. And as you remember, it was a very contentious issue the last time this was brought up. So I don't know how we would judge that other than by what the results of the survey were, which was obviously there were more people who supported the transfer station, a curbside than the transfer station. But it was still probably about evenly split. As the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee is correctly noted, every year since 2017, the numbers have dropped, which creates a vicious cycle. So as the numbers drop, you got to raise more revenues, enterprise fund. So you have to raise the rates. Now this year we were able to keep the rates essentially the same as last year, dropped by $1. But what's helping prop that up is the pay to throw.
Mr. President, I move with a question.
And the the question was a little while ago.
Yeah,
But I
just a lo-
believe the intent of it was to engage the town, direct the town administrator to start the process of pulling together an RFP. And that I think even that's going to take a little bit of time to make sure we've got everything vetted, so that we, and whether it's, maybe we don't have to get, I was thinking of when Mr. Rayner was just mentioning that Middletown is having some discussions with the vendor. I'm wondering if we can get a sense, from other vendors or municipalities, if you have so many thousand customers, if you have 4,000 customers, this is what your average cost is going to be. Something along those lines, where even for budget and planning purposes, because to put together, here's the thing, if you put together an RFP as a fishing expedition, you're not, you may not get good information because contractors know you're not doing anything for another 18 months. So, maybe if we can get some information up front, where if we can get, what the cost range may be, it'll point us in the direction I think we want to go, so that we can then further maybe refine the RFP process moving forward. Like, I think to Mr. Rayner's point, we need to be able to, get to a certain number for this to be viable for the contractors. The more participation, the better cost we're going to be. So there's probably going to have to be a ramping up of an awareness that this is going to happen, so that residents, or could happen, so that residents are aware, it might be time to move to curbside. And if we are going to go curbside, the more people that we have engaged, the better, the better it may be. One of the questions that one of the things that I guess need to clarify, I need to understand, Mr. Hamilton, you said 6,700 households. Does that include the condominiums and things of that nature, or no?
And that's a rough number I've used the past few years. I'd have to clarify that with Matt. As to single family households who would be on curbside.
Right. That's the number. We need to understand how many single family households are eligible to participate, because I think condominiums or some of these places might have private agreements, which they wouldn't, maybe they don't participate in because it's technically private property, right? So I don't know if they're eligible or not eligible to participate. If you're part of if you're part of Carnegie Abbey, are you, can you put your trash bins out? I don't know. So, those are the kind of things that we would want to understand, what's a good number for us to be targeting of those eligible single family households. So I'm wondering if there's a little bit of homework we could do before we actually go the RFP process, only because I don't want to discourage contractors if we're just trying to get pricing. We might be able to get some pricing over the short term to point us in that direction. And then, maybe we have, we probably have to understand what's our deadline to issue an RFP as well, in order to implement this thing in say the 18 months. So it's definitely something we need to do. I just think, what's the timing of it?
There's also two other factors in there. One is sticker fees go from January 1 to December 31st. And we're looking to try and we have a contract that ends on June 30th. So we would have to figure out how to bridge that gap for 6 months. I wouldn't put a time frame on this there. We have to have an answer by, I don't know, I can't remember if you put a time frame on there. This is Fusa. That's
Well,
what he had.
I'm happy to acknowledge your legitimate concerns about the complexity and, not wanting to just get numbers that may not be realistic at this point and withdraw that motion. However, I do believe we need to direct the town administrator to start looking into implementing the fundamental recommendation of the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee, which is that 2/3 of our population appear to have already voted to go curbside. And we have 7 or 8 companies doing it. And that makes no sense for any number of reasons. And that we need to start as a town looking at implementing a town-wide curbside pickup program similar to what's in Middletown. And so, Mr. Rayner, I don't want to limit you in a way by my prior motion, but I would make a motion that you explore the best way to take that first step of implementing the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee's recommendation that we go to town-wide curbside pickup. Is that too broad a motion?
That was a question for you.
I mean, I have the recommendations here. We'll start working on it.
And maybe just report back in a, maybe we try to do this where you're reporting back to us on this, in a month or something along those lines, just so that we keep this at the forefront and try to stay on top of it. So that, we are in a position to act, in a timely manner.
We'll work with the committee and the liaison.
And I do want to make that a formal motion so that we can direct our town administrator to act on this.
I'll second that.
Is there any further questions or comments, discussion?
What's the motion?
The motion is to direct our town administrator to begin putting together, I guess, a plan to move this town towards curbside pickup for everyone in town.
Would that be in a tax base or would that be?
I don't know until we see the numbers.
So the first step, I like the idea of separating out the multiple issues here but whether it goes in the tax base, but how we address composting, there's a lot of issues that were raised by the presentation. I like keeping them separate and starting with the step of what the town administrator and administration can come back to us with in terms of what a plan and possible future going towards pay-as-you-throw might look. Going towards curbside pickup might look like.
Also remember, the last time we went through this, we offered the hybrid of being able to utilize the transfer station, and none of the companies that were coming in to look at it took that option.
Right.
So we had in the back of our head too, that they might not want to run a diversion program, and that could be a completely separate entity within the town.
Right.
So it's pretty complex. Just at least most of them.
Yep. So are we going to Mr. Gleason?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, councilors. Dave Gleason here, 63 Massasoit Avenue. Having served on the recycling committee at its onset, just a couple things I think that the council should be aware of. Have been and still am a proponent of using the compactor, but I do see that there's an end in sight. But there are issues with the curbside pickup. Today, on my walk around the village, I picked up, stuff that the people that stopped and picked today left by the side of the road. There is no incentive for these people that do curbside pickup to police themselves. And it falls on individual citizens that want to see Portsmouth remain clean to do that policing, unfortunately, along with all the transmission and gear oil leaks that you see on the street from the curbside pickup, together with that summertime peeve I have of leaky tailgates. So you end up with leaky trash fluids attracting flies and animals on the streets of Portsmouth. So those are some of the things you're going to have to deal with. The other thing you have is a convenience of the recycling that we have at our existing transfer facility is you can monitor the recycling rate. At one point, we used to receive money back from RIREC, but that appears to be a thing of the past. But one of the variables you have is how do you monitor whether Waste Management or Patriot or Cleanway, how do they tell you what the percentage is of the residents of Portsmouth are recycling to be able to qualify for any future benefits? I think you're going to have an issue there. Two other comments. I think we need a recycling coordinator. People don't have anybody, unless I'm missing the boat, they don't have somebody to ask questions of other than the gate guard. People there gate guards have told people that you're supposed to put your shredded paper in with the recycling, and that's not what RIREC wants. The other thing, just one last comment in Ted's proposal, and I think Ted is doing a good job, but again, when the committee was started, it was all people that use the transfer station, and now the committee is composed of people that just do curbside pickup. But there was suggestions to pick up waste at the beach and a couple other places. And I understand that RIREC is strictly set up for residential waste pickup. And even technically, you know, our own pickup around town is not considered residential trash pickup. So they got a couple areas there you should also look at when you're investigating this. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Gleason. Okay. I do not see any more hands raised. So we have a motion and a second to direct the town administrator to begin the process of reviewing the recommendations and coming up with a plan to come back to us with some recommendations on potential curbside recycling, curbside trash pickup. And again, I think we're not making a decision tonight. We're making a decision to start the process to get some, additional information to help support future decisions. So I just want to be clear that to folks that are listening in, this is just an early process that we need to go out and do some, some fact finding and get some information so that we can come back and make informed decisions that ultimately we want to make sure are benefiting the residents of the town of Portsmouth. So at this point, I'm comfortable with the motion and the second. Any last thoughts here before we vote? Okay, let's vote. All in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all. Okay. Moving on to new business number 2. The Town Council's 2022 state legislative priorities. It's our list to review, discuss, in preparation for our meeting with our delegates. Ms. Ujifuza, you've done an excellent job once again pulling this together. Would you like to take us through it?
Right. So just as background, every year we do meet with our state legislators in January to ask them to pursue certain legislative priorities. The school committee has done the same thing for many more years than we have been. But basically, I thought that it was important to lay out some of the concerns that we have prior to meeting with them, so we have a consensus about what we think is important. The first thing on my list, because I wrote this prior to the governor's decision, was to have virtual and hybrid meetings, and so we can take that off the list for now. Number 2 is to really reverse the past tax cuts on the wealthy, because that is essentially what moved a lot of the tax burden to our property owners, because municipalities got less money from the state and had to make it up by raising property taxes. So I think folks who make $450,000 a year or more should pay their fair share, and they are not. And I cite various articles that discuss that. The third item I've listed is to protect our internet services. Mr. Peets, who wears many hats, is leading that charge for our town. But at the state level, they are looking into having an internet commissioner. I think we're the only state in the union that doesn't have someone in charge of that. And you know how important the internet was, especially during COVID. So I hope that we could ask our state legislators to focus on that. The fourth thing comes from our brush with fossil fuel infrastructure on Old Mill Lane. And I think it's fair to say that it's, you know, it's important that we try to get a handle on not having more fossil fuel infrastructure created, and also doing things that benefit our consumers and the safety of our neighborhoods over over the utilities profits. And then the fifth thing is to remove private corporate middlemen who are making our healthcare much more expensive than anywhere else in the world. I will leave it to Dr. Ryan to flesh that out, but it relates to our town because OPEB has always been identified as a huge economic burden on us. That's other post-employment benefits, and most of OPEB consists of health insurance costs. And then after those five things, I've listed the staff's legislative priorities list. I copied and pasted that. So if you have questions, you can ask the staff about those. I particularly appreciate that first one about having Defense Highway, Burma Road being accepted by the state. My understanding is that the Navy can actually contribute more money to maintaining that road if it didn't own that property. And it has something to do with this arcane funding mechanisms that exist. But it's time that the state realize that that's the third major artery through Aquidneck Island. And we cannot afford to let that languish. And other than that, I'm open to hearing what y'all have to say and hope we can meet with the state legislators in a positive way. They have pressed for things that we asked for in the past, and they did pass. And I'll let the state legislators who might be on right now speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diffuso. I just want to clarify. So on number one, though, number one is still on the table though, right?
It is on the table because we need a long-term solution for sure.
Right.
I guess I meant it was immediately solved
Oh, yeah,
for the
no.
short term,
No, but I do think that, you know, the one thing that's, you know, probably come out of the pandemic is what's allowed us to, you know, to open up these opportunities to get more participation. I still think it's important maybe for, you know, for the actual, when possible, the decision body to be present in the council chambers. But there are times when there are situations where, you know, a counselor needs to be out of town, but is still able to participate. And I think they should be afforded those types of opportunities to still be able to participate. But due to some extenuating circumstances, they can't be present. So I do think that that's something that we should continue to push for, and hopefully that will gain some traction with the legislators. Thank you.
I completely agree. I mean, we're definitely not out of this epidemic yet. Gives us more flexibility. I mean, who thought 6 months ago we'd be worried about an Omicron variant? We were still back in D. So it makes no sense to suspend this ability to cope with an ever-shifting epidemic until the epidemic is over. And you know, and in longer term, as our president is saying, it makes sense to, you know, give us the flexibility in case individual members, for whatever reason, cannot be here physically, but can be here via the internet. I mean, we've had the internet now for quite a while, and it seems to work pretty well. You know, I think being able to make use of it in a creative fashion makes sense.
I would agree and support it. Do any counselors have any questions, want to comment on the, make any additions?
I'd like to make an addition. Same one I had last year about recreational marijuana. The General Assembly didn't do much with it last year, but I can see that coming down the pipe. That we should not be forced to have multiple marijuana facilities here in town, and any revenue gained from said marijuana facilities, that the town should realize tax revenue from that directly, not to go into the general fund, but part of the tax revenue that is gained from the sale of recreational marijuana should go directly to the towns that are posting it, because we'll be dealing with the issues that come along with it, including traffic, excess drug abuse, extra police patrols. So I would like to add that back into it as well. I'm going to forward mine from last year over to the clerk, so she has to add it for the priorities meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Katzman, did you?
I just wanted to, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to concur in some sense on the open meetings provision, but in my opinion, it isn't necessarily limited to COVID or Omicron or a pandemic in general. We can foresee that there will be times in the future, maybe for no reason, that some, or as you said, Mr. President, maybe a circumstance where a council member just can't make it for whatever reason. But the issue is, with it being just an executive order, there may not necessarily be good or appropriate guidance in it on how, what the criteria are and how it can be framed and how it can be done. For example, you mentioned something about should be on screen and, keep your camera on, this sort of thing. That isn't necessarily going to be a part of any random executive order. So I think that if it is in legislation, it will have gone through, at least in theory, some committee and examination process so that Rhode Island can be a leader in having the capacity to do remote meetings on a general basis, because that's coming someday.
Yep. No, I think these are all good points, and I think that if we can just get the right folks in the room, they can get this done, because it sounds like it has had some traction. There have been discussions, and I think even the legislators, have benefited from being able to participate remotely. So they should also see the benefits of being able to carry this forward even beyond, the pandemic, because there are going to be times, and maybe they can, put some stipulations in there, but there are going to be times where, a legislator or a counselor or board member, can't physically be at the room. Maybe they're injured and can't, get there, but they could participate from their home. And, those are the kind of things that I think about, could help expand our capabilities. That's all.
Hand in hand, this goes hand in hand with item number 3 on improving Rhode Island's internet infrastructure.
Okay, so I think any further comments or questions from counselors? So we got the one addition from Mr. Hamilton will get added in, and then we can pass this along to our legislators ahead of the meeting. We need a motion, or are we good?
I don't think we need a motion.
Okay. All right. Okay, hold on, I got a lot of paper in front of me.
Actually, I would like a motion.
Oh, sure.
Good, buy me some time here. I was decluttering.
Make one.
I would move that what we have included, and I guess Mr. Hamilton's suggestion be passed forward to our legislators for discussion at the next meeting.
Second that.
Unranked, right?
Yes.
Unranked.
There's no way.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I'm sorry.
He didn't think that they should be ranked.
Oh,
Change all the numbers to bullets then.
Just bullet them.
Well, it's hard to identify them.
We'll say bullet number 1, bullet number 2. Oh, I'm gonna move on real quick. All those in favor?
Yeah.
Mr. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Kaufman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay. Let us move on here. This next one is it's a request to provide a letter to the Department of Transportation indicating agreement of the East Main Road resurfacing projects. I think we all did a double take when we saw this one. Mr. Rayner, could you cap it out? Could you recap it for us?
Last week, I was informed by the head of Rhode Island Planning and the director at LB that infrastructure money from the Infrastructure Act has been made available to Rhode Island, which will enable the Department of Transportation to accelerate some of the projects in the TIP. What they are proposing is to accelerate the East Main Road projects by bundling them into one project and rescoping the vision for the town center project. The town center project never made it past the 75% planning stage. That was back in 2014-15 timeframe. At that time, there was not a proposal, but there was a vision to have 3 roundabouts, one here at Headley, one in front of Food Works, and one down by Clements. They want to begin replanning that project this year. And they envision 1 roundabout and then the addition of traffic calming measures, pedestrian control crosswalks and sidewalks. But before they prioritize, make this project a priority, they want the assent of Portsmouth. So they're asking for us to agree to make this a priority. You're not agreeing to the scope of the project, you're just agreeing to make this a priority. They would bundle the projects and begin planning this year once they get that assent. And then, of course, the town would be involved in the development of the plan. So we're requesting, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. We're requesting that you give us permission to go ahead and provide that letter as requested by DOT plan.
I move that we provide a letter as requested by our town administrator, saying that, yes, this is a priority, please.
Second.
I have to backpedal one second here. I really need to recuse myself on this one. Ms. Ujifuza, if you could take the lead. I do work for a consultant. DOT has not awarded any of this work yet. So in the event that this does go out for an RFP or solicitation, my company could be participating. So I just need to recuse myself from voting.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Abbott. Is there a second?
Mr. Hamilton?
Sorry, second for discussion. I just want to add something to the letter, or a couple of things to the letter. When I reviewed this with Mr. Crosby, when we went over and met for this STIP meeting back in June or July. No, this is when we went over Narragansett this past summer.
Yeah, this past summer.
There's 2 projects that are missing out of the letter from DOT. Well, one specifically, they talked about doing crosswalks and intersection improvements at McCory Lane, which was STIP ID 5377. If I put my glasses on or make this bigger, I probably can actually read it. I'll just make sure that I got that number right. So yeah, 5377, and 2 other requests were, as they're doing this project, would be to create left turn lanes on the southbound side at Sandy Point Avenue, going on to Sandy Point Avenue, and on the northbound side at Union Street, going on to Union Street, to alleviate some of the traffic similar to, and if we're gonna go all the way out there, we should probably ask them to do the improvements at Stump-Hill as well, where you just have that silly green light that turns left even though it's turning left.
And where people run red lights
That one too, yeah.
hundreds of times a day. Yes.
Those are all good additions.
Mr. Hamilton, were those suggestions contained in the safety audit recommendations for short-term?
It was in 5377 was in the improvement. The other ones I added because it was, if we're gonna do these things, let's do it all at once rather than just repaving it and coming back. In fact, they wanted to repave East Main Road and then 2 years come back and do the crosswalk improvements.
No, but I mean, if you read the letter, it says not only did they
It's
want to
not.
undertake tip things, but they also wanted to undertake stuff that was recommended in the safety audit. And so I'm just wondering, were the things that you're recommending not tipped on item 5377, but the other two items, were they, and I guess I'm asking staff, were they already included, subsumed under the safety audit?
I don't think that those, because Sandy points out, were included in the road safety assessment, which we certainly requested. I seem to remember that there was a discussion to do this at Union. But we can go ahead and put it in the letter. I mean, that's what this is about. They want a letter from us assenting to the project, and then they want our participation in the development of the plan.
Okay.
Can I make another comment? I would also really like to, and I know there's mentions of these shared use paths in their letter, but I think our response to them should also clearly state that adding accommodations for alternative modes of transportation, like such as shared use paths or bike paths, is also a priority for us.
Right.
I'm a little bit worried to do that, and here's why. We discussed this with Director Albede last week, and he was very clear in letting us know that this is really just the East Main Road projects. The shared use bike paths they are also in the TIP. There's phase 1, 2, and 3 that goes all the way out to 2031, I guess. And so while we can make mention that those are clear priorities, I think it would be a little bit dangerous for us to conflate those with East Main Road.
So I disagree, and this is why, because I think this is a really big project, and it can be undertaken in phases. And if they're gonna, propose design changes to East Main Road, they should plan for the future of how a shared use path will be incorporated into the design without necessarily delaying the resurfacing or the sidewalks, because that should be the priority. But the long-term plan needs to accommodate for everything that we might potentially have on East Main Road over the next, however many years. So I think and this is the devil's in the details on how we word the letter, but you can even say, take into account future accommodations for a shared use path without saying that it's a requirement for the project to happen now. Does that make sense?
So your motion is to approve the letter as written with an addendum of sorts, I guess, that
There
also
isn't a letter
says,
written yet.
well, this is the proposal that they are seeking us to approve. So let's call it X. And let's call everything that you and Mr. Hamilton are proposing to add as Y. So I think what I'm hearing is this staff is suggesting that if we don't pass X and we insist that X become X plus Y, that we risk not getting X to pass. Is that a fair assessment, Mr. Rayner?
Well, I think what Councilor Abbott stated there, as long as we ask them to make sure that the provisions in the plan for their anticipated shared use bike path, I think we're okay. I think what Director Albede was advising me to do is not make this contingent on other projects that are already in the TIP.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think this project needs to happen, and it should not be contingent on other projects. But we don't want this project to lose sight of other future projects, because those other future projects, will hopefully eventually come.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the recommended project with the additional language suggested by Mr. Hamilton and Ms. Abbott, that we have other priorities as well.
I think the
And-
motion is to write a letter in support of
Correct.
this, right? So,
Right,
It's one of the projects, but, add in there's a couple of things that they left out, but
okay.
we definitely need to get Eastman Road repaved.
yes, we do.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do you understand the motion?
I will be listening to it again,
Okay,
at least 3 or 4 times.
okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Yes, yes, if not, I second, but yes.
Oh, I thought we had a motion by Ms. Abbott and a second from Mr. Hamilton.
Yes.
I believe
Okay.
we do, yes.
All right, and so, Madam Clerk, would you take the roll call?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
So the motion passes 6 to
Zero.
0 to 1 abstention.
Abstention.
Thank you very much.
One recusal.
Oh, 1 recusal, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ujibuza. All right. Let's move on to new business number 4. It's a request to approve the purchase of a VACCON sewer jet trailer from the National Joint Purchasing Alliance for $65,535. Mr. Woodhead?
Council President, members of the council. On November 22nd, the town council approved the town's recommended priorities for the American Rescue Plan. And in that, the recommended priorities listed a purchase of a jet trailer. This piece of equipment will help the Public Works Department in the maintenance of our stormwater drainage system. And I request the council approval for the purchase of a new VACCON sewer jet trailer for the sum of $65,535.
Motion to approve?
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7 to 0. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Okay, next item under new business, it's a request to accept a proposal for actuarial and budgeting software. Ms. Lasky?
Yes, Mr. President, I'll kick off, turn it over to Mr. Lasky. We do have representatives from the firm available online as well. Right now, what we have is we have contracts with, or we have agreements with 2 actuary firms, one for OPEB, one for pensions, that's Nyhart and Siegel. Together, we average about $45,000 a year for those services, for that money. All we get are the gas fee reports that are required in the valuation report, which lists out the ARP payments. Any other services that are required, forecasting, budgeting, what if scenarios, contract negotiations, has to be paid for separately. That cost is about $350 an hour, plus $500 for travel. And then the more people that touch that project, of course, those costs escalate. This software would allow us to do this in-house. It would give us access to real-time information. It would allow us to do those functions, and I'll let the finance director expound on that. But that cost would be about $67,500 for the suite. It escalates at the rate of inflation per year for the 3-year contract at no more than 5%. So we're asking for your consideration for this approval to purchase this software. Ms. Lasky.
Certainly, we went out to RFP, as everybody knows. We only had one respondent to our RFP. They were going to, the respondent is Nyhart. They came in with a vote to perform just the valuation for the pension, the valuation for the OPEB, and give us our GASB reports, and that's the extent of it. And then any additional services, Mr. Mayor said, would be additional costs. as part of looking at this, we also had spoken to the City of Leagues and Towns, and upon recommendation of at least talking to another group, this GovInvest, was a sole provider of software, a software that provides support for budgeting, labor costing, and on top of providing actuarial services and support that we would need, including all the GASB reports and evaluation reports. So we brought them in, and they are a sole source provider, and we talked to them as well, and we had a demonstration from them of their software. We brought in the pension committee head, which is Jonathan Harris, to speak to them and question them and ask them about some of, understand the depth of their services and the depth, frankly, of their experience and their understanding of pensions and OPEBs, which is some of our most significant liabilities for the town. Mr. Harris provided us with a letter of recommendation after speaking with this group, and I believe Brian may be on the line still. Brian is from GovInvest. If we have specific questions of the product, we can ask the team and the experts in this. However, I think what I like about GovInvest compared to just basically buying reports, evaluation reports, those valuation reports give us a couple of numbers. They give us our ARC payment for our pension. They tell us what they expect us to spend in healthcare costs for OPEB for the upcoming year, because we do not currently fund our OPEB. And then they give us required financial statement documentation. It's all old, pretty much old information by the time we get it, because they're basing everything off the prior year end. So by the time we get it to put in our financial report, we use it for the financials, we publish the financials, we put our ARC payment into our budget, and we stop using them pretty much. This software is much more robust. It's not just providing actuarial service, it's also providing a dynamic software solution to help us with our day-to-day decision making, support union negotiation contracts or contracting and negotiations, provide scenario projections, and cost comparisons and more. As Mr. Rayner said, we spend approximately $45,000 a year to get that limited service from the current providers, Siebel and Nyhart. Let me see here. And then, like I said, the usefulness is limited. Why are we interested in this software? Well, because for one, every single decision we make on a contract, has a long-term impact. This software gives us the ability to quickly listen to our union and their requests and make decisions, or at least not make decisions, but talk to them about the cost impact. We don't have that ability now without going out and getting the consultant again, paying the $350 plus an hour to run one scenario and then run two scenarios, and then every time that cost escalates. And with this software, we can actually do it while we're in the meetings with the negotiations. It will give us a lot of flexibility. It will build trust, frankly, with our union, because they're going to see us running these scenarios. They're going to see the costs and how they impact the long-term costs for the town and, frankly, the tax rate. It's going to give us the ability to make real-time decisions. So if somebody wants to propose something, we can look at the opportunity cost of providing that versus providing something else. A lot of our town councilors, looking at future things for the town. Well, what will it cost? What does it cost to fund OPEB? What can we do if we fund OPEB? What can we do if we fund a community center? There's so many questions out there. And we don't have a dynamic system right now to be able to make those decisions quickly and really well without hiring additional consultants. If we want to make good long-term decisions, a system like this will help support our decision-making on an everyday basis. And that's why I'm in support of this system. Brian, is Brian available? He is. Brian, would you like to say a few words, or your team?
Yeah, hi everyone. This is Brian Tamosh from GovInvest. I just want to thank you all for considering our proposal here, and definitely happy to answer any questions. But yeah, we're pretty excited to hopefully work with the town. I know a couple of big initiatives that Lisa and I have talked about. One is the OPEB unfunded liability and those costs that I know has already come up in this meeting here today as something that's obviously something that is pretty important to the town as far as managing costs, and then also understanding some labor negotiations that are coming up pretty shortly here that are a little bit more urgent in terms of the time frame here, and just making sure that we can help like Lisa said, just hopefully try to give you the ability to make better decisions in real time, and being a little bit more of like a fixed cost model than, you know, what you talked about with the hourly rate with the actuaries here. But, you know, happy to answer any questions if anybody has any as well.
Mr. President, I'm wondering, are there other towns in Rhode Island that use the software?
Brian, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, there are. So we have already been working with Middletown and Narragansett, and we also just got started with Westerly a couple of weeks ago as well.
Ms. Lasky, as far as utilizing the program, would there be much of a learning curve for your, like, who do you foresee using this, yourself and Lisa in HR? Like who?
The nice thing about this program is that you can have a lot of end users. So I think it really depends on what we're using it for. I think that putting together, frankly, GovInvest does the building of all of these things behind the scenes for us, and we do a lot of test work, and that's part of the cost and the implementation fee of the product. So what they're actually building it, testing our model against current actuarial models. So they're building it so we know that there's accuracy and behind it. And so with that, all we're doing is providing them the information to build these, and they have a team behind them that's supporting that. When it comes to that, they're building it, we're testing it, and we're gonna, have that very robust. However, when it comes to the users, I think Lisa, Leah and I and HR are gonna be some of the primary users, but I think we're gonna be able to use them for larger meetings when it comes to, frankly, town council. When the town council is making a proposal and they're asking for the costs and the long-term impact, we're gonna be able to get that information in a format and a reportable format much easier than we can currently, because we would have to go back and frankly build for each scenario a new job, because this kind of software is very robust. This isn't something we could build. We can build simple, some simple things, but it wouldn't necessarily take everything into account. This has been built over years and with lots of experience, and that's, unfortunately, that's where the cost comes into it, but it's going to provide us with better decisions for long-term cost control.
Would this software, I mean, so obviously the financial reporting is important to us, and the labor costing, and those are what we're currently, utilizing other providers to as you mentioned, whether it's Neidhart or Siegel, they're currently who have been providing those services to us. Is there any additional benefits to the program? Like, would any of what's in this program either supplement or improve your current software so that you're moving out of one type and moving into this? Like, I'm just trying to, figure out the big picture.
They're very different. So we get information from our current actuaries, primarily for our financial statements and for one number for our payment for our ARC. It provides us very limited information past that. This will help with budgeting, strategic planning, scenario processing. So if we're looking at alternatives to different costs, it's going to be, let's test 5% inflation for the next few years. What's the impact going to be on, the cost of our services? And what about if we have one, union negotiation with a 2% or 2.5%, 3%, over 2 years, and then in the third year, is it something different? Is it pensionable? Is it not pensionable? All these things are options in this, so that we can put it into the scenario, see the long-term costs, and get a real picture of what's going to be. Now, in the past, some decisions have been made. They didn't have this kind of support of the system, and the long-term costs weren't necessarily calculated out 50, potentially 30 years. They were looked at maybe possibly 10 years, maybe, even only 3 years. And so what we're looking at now is making sure that as we make decisions now, the 30-year impact or longer is being taken into consideration, because frankly, Portsmouth's still going to be around even when we're not sitting here.
Okay, Thank you, Ms. Lasky. Any questions from counselors?
Mr. Griggs here.
Okay. Mr. Grieve gonna come on up?
He's coming.
Okay.
Long walk in the back of the chamber.
That's right, this is weird.
It's not easy. It's not easy, you know, but all right, Mr. Grieve.
Okay,
We'll hear you.
in 2012, the town council froze the defined benefit pension plan and installed a 401k plan for the town. At that time, it was estimated the annual cost of the frozen pension plan would be about $2.6 million each year until 2040, when our pension liability would be fully funded. Our annual contribution is now $5.7 million a year. That means our yearly cost has gone from 2.6 to $5.7 million in only 8 years. That is well over 100% increase in the yearly funding cost of this quote frozen unquote pension plan. Clearly, either the original plan was faulty or the pension is not being administered according to plan. The 1-year increase in the plan's liability during fiscal 2020 alone had the same financial impact on Portsmouth as building the new police station. That shows just how significant this problem is. Yet there has been no council discussion of this serious issue, and the public only has the professional actuarial reports for information. Over the last 8 years, the town has contributed more than $36 million into the pension fund, but the pension liability has increased $38 million during the same time. That means despite those major funding increases, our contributions are not even keeping up with the growth of the pension liability of our supposedly frozen plan. It should be obvious even to a semi-alert counselor that something is wrong and needs to be fixed. Purchasing this software and moving the actuarial tasks in-house is not a solution to the major problems with our pension plan. But that proposed change does eliminate the formal professional oversight of the town's pension plan decisions. No longer would there be a knowledgeable fiduciary putting out a report covering the decisions and assumptions that are made. The independent Siegel actuarial report was the only document which revealed to the residents that there had been an unauthorized rate change last year. That check and balance will be lost. Making a significant change which reduces professional oversight at this time when there are obvious pension problems is ill-advised. Middletown can afford professional oversight as their pension is 100% funded. Our pension plan is at least another generation of residents away from that position. Therefore, I think it is imperative before making any change, such as bringing actuarial tasks in-house, that a complete examination of the pension plan be done by an outside expert. That would identify major drivers for the liability increases, which we urgently need to understand and address. It would also establish an unassailable baseline against which to judge our progress. Simply changing vendors and altering process is ignoring the real problems. The ability of the software to evaluate what-if scenarios in real time sounds attractive, but since our pension plan is frozen, how important can that benefit be? If that capability is really needed, purchase the less expensive software package, but continue to retain a professional actuary to produce the town's primary yearly actuarial report, thus providing the needed checks and balances. To summarize, the council should spend money on a complete pension plan review instead of software. The staff recommended software approach increases costs. It does not identify or address the real pension problems. And the results are not a publicly available product of a licensed actuarial profession. Regardless of the council's decision on this software, a complete pension examination is urgently needed.
That should be pension priority number one for the council, not purchasing software which allows the staff more easily to manipulate pension plan numbers. Questions? Thank you.
Can I make a clarification? I'd like to make a clarification that we are not trying to bring our actuarial services in-house. I am not an actuary, nor is Lisa Folia, nor do we plan on performing the services of the actuary. This software, and I believe we can have GovInvest chime in at this point, has not only the software, but it has an entire actuarial division that will be performing the actuarial services similar to the Neidhart and the Siebel. So they have a completely separate part of their business that does that report and then provides the GASB. We will not be performing our own. We will be basically doing the same thing we do now, which is the information will be in the system. We will be providing the information on the data on the individuals in the plans. We will be providing any kind of documentation that's requested, similar to what Neidhart and Siegel have requested in the past. And then the actuaries from GovInvest will be doing that actuarial work, and they will also be providing the GASB reports and evaluations as previously we have received. And as Mr. Green mentioned, there is a lot of importance to the other types of areas, the cost analysis, and we're looking at the scenarios. There's a great benefit to be received by not only getting that benefit, but then also on top of it, still getting our independent actuarial evaluation. At GovInvest, Brian, if you'd like to chime in on the support services.
Yep.
Around the actuaries.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll echo what Lisa said. So we are certified actuaries. We have actuaries on staff that will be putting together all those same reports. So there'll be no, we're not taking away the reports that you get right now. We'll be still creating the exact same reports that you're getting from your current actuaries, and you'll still be able to publish those so that, they can be reviewed by the town and by the public as well. So there's no intention for, like Lisa said, for Lisa to be creating actuarial reports. That's not how this works. We have a chief actuary on staff that will be creating and signing off on all those reports. The point of the software is to allow you to run scenarios so that you can make decisions in the in-between time, so you don't just have to wait for that one report to come before you get to actually make decisions. You can make decisions in real time, but we are still going to be creating those same GASB reports, those same pension reports, just like you had before. So there should be no difference at all in that process. As far as the overall support and consulting, that is a big part of the service in general. So in addition to the actuarial services, which are included as part of this, we do also have a team of finance directors that can, provide consulting services, and that's not an additional charge that we charge. That's the difference between us and the actuaries that you work with, the consultants that you work with. That's all part of our service model. It's kind of why clients stick with us long term, is because you can actually, we can essentially be an extension of Lisa and Rich's team, so that we can provide additional support. But again, just to re-echo, we are a certified actuary and we'll be providing those exact same reports. There should be no change there.
All right. So I guess maybe an extension of this discussion is we've already had Mr. Harris from the pension committee weigh in on this, but I also think moving forward, maybe there could be a little more interaction with our pension committee as well, to get them also reviewing and involved in the process, so that maybe we can improve our overall objective here, which is to make sure that we're managing our money responsibly and make sure that we're in a good position and aware of these costs and things as we move forward with budgeting. So I think there's still some room for improvement here. I'm glad to hear that there's no loss in oversight from the actuarial standpoint. I'm glad that that was addressed. I did have a concern about the the preparation of the reports, and as long as everything is still being done under the, the oversight of the actuaries, then this seems to be something that our finance director's very passionate about. It sounds like it's going to allow us some additional capabilities, which I hope would also improve our overall operations between finance and HR. So I'm not going to be an expert on the program. Thank you for participating tonight, Brian, to clarify. And I think it's important to make sure that we have that technical support and level of expertise to assist us and be an extension of our services.
Thank you.
Very full support of, continuing to work with our pension committee and providing as much information and have more meetings and just increase the knowledge of the base and the people who are interested. Of course they are, it's their pension, it's the town's paying for this. We want to provide the best information possible and increase the number of meetings and have the activity level. So we're in full support of that.
How long is this agreement? And how long would it be working with them?
The agreement, the initial agreement is for 3 years. The thing about this software, which frankly, it's fantastic. You can export everything. So if we were going to leave them after 3 years, we can take everything that we've gained at least, and we can take it with us because it's all exportable into Excel format. You can't do that with many other softwares. This is, it's just an advantage that, but they keep you because they provide the service behind it. And I'm hearing testimonials, and I've read testimonials on this product, and that's why I don't anticipate with the added value that I see us receiving, that we're gonna be walking away from this after 3 years. I think we're gonna find even more reasons to, look to them to contribute.
It's significantly more expensive. About 40,000 in the first year and 30,000 every year after that. I'm going to vote to approve this, by the way. I just want to make sure we're gonna get that much work done. And you seem to be telling me we are, but I want to make sure we are.
All I can say is one bad decision can lead to $1 million problem, long-term debt. So you can spend the money now and make a good decision, or try to make better decisions, or you can have one bad decision have a very long-term impact. What we're trying to do is stop those long-term decisions that can have huge long-term liabilities to the town.
Can you give me some kind of example on how this software would help us do that?
Brian, you can can you do the case study for the pension that you worked on? Is he still there?
I'm sure he is.
Hey, yeah, I lowered my hand, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, can definitely weigh in. I mean, there's a few different kind of big time examples that we can talk about. I mean, even just the first one that we're going to potentially work with the town on is around your labor negotiations too. So being able to, have our software to be able to essentially be more efficient with your labor negotiations and be able to have more accurate numbers at the bargaining table with the groups there. And that's really good for both sides too, just to be totally transparent about that. It's not kind of benefiting one side or the other. It's about both sides having access to information that they can both trust in and that they can be more informed in, so that we can get to consensus a lot faster and things that both sides can be a little bit more sort of comfortable with more quickly is what we found. So there's a tremendous amount of time savings there. From the pension and OPEB side, I mean, the big areas that we talked about, especially on the OPEB side, what we've done with a lot of clients is we've helped them figure out, especially one of the things that we had talked with Lisa about and the team was about, how to pre-fund for OPEB and how to not just pre-fund, but also how to, when to start thinking about taking out of a trust to start paying for the OPEB costs along the way. And so that's really what you use our software for, is to model out scenarios like that. And so a lot of our clients will go in and physically go and say, all right, if we're going to go through this scenario here, we're going to, see this increase in cost, and being able to really clearly document that. And so to the point or the question before about like, hey, we need to do an analysis of our pension or our OPEB costs, and we really need to explain that to the public. That's really what the software will be useful for, is to go in and really create visuals in a very simple and easy way that are easy to explain to folks that are not necessarily finance professionals, what small decisions or sometimes large decisions in regards to your pension or OPEB can have on the budget, both short-term and long-term. So if we invest X number of dollars into our OPEB and put it into a trust, this is what we're going to save long-term. Sometimes that's a really hard conversation to have when you're looking at, we want to do this versus, building a park, which, is a tangible thing that we can put dollars around. But using our software, you're going to be able to really a lot easier and in real time be able to show like, this is how this is going to save us more money, and we can potentially build 2 parks or, whatever it is that we decide to spend that money on. But this is a tangible result. So that's the whole goal around our software, is being able to make it really simple and clear what some of these decisions are having on the budget, so that we're not just waking up 3 years from now, with a large unfunded liability when it comes to OPEB, and saying, well, now we need to raise taxes, for example. This is helping you sort of get more in front of challenges like this and make better forward-looking decisions, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer your question, Andrew?
In a general sense.
Okay. Any further questions from counselors?
I was just gonna negotiate on the price, but that's probably too late to do that. Maybe we need to get the $10,000 implementation fee waived. But I also have a question, same as Andrew's question, that, we have a 3-year contract. After a year and a half, if we are not happy, what is the out? I see the Narragansett only in a 1-year contract. Yeah, why? So
I know GovInvest was willing to make, look at that kind of a term, and they were going to be discussing that, and I know Brian was going to be looking at that for us. We did a 3-year because that's, when you're building a product like this, there's a lot of time and a lot of, we're paying for the implementation, but the investment in time, is worth putting some time to. We have other software that we've invested a lot of time in, sometimes it takes a while to get a software to work. And sometimes you find out after 3 years that the software is not working out that well, and you choose to change over to a new one. But it doesn't always happen overnight that you make these decisions. But I don't even think it's, 6 months, we might not see all the benefits of it. In the year, we'll have gone through one budget cycle. Some of these things, you're not going to see you're going to see the long-term impact when you're making decisions. But I think the easy thing is you see the cost now, you see the cost increase, but you can't see every day when we're making a decision and we're saving $1 million. So we don't put something in that as a pensionable benefit in the contract. You just save a certain number of dollars because we kept it to short-term cost, or we gave them a benefit somewhere else to make them whole, but not add to the long-term burden to the town. So those decisions you might not see as often, but we'll be making them every day when we're trying to work on.
Sure. So to that point, I guess this question will go to Brian. We have a pretty hybrid system, because we have regular pensioners who are in the pension system that are retired. We have holdovers, legacy people. We have 401k folks, and we have folks that are in the municipal employee retirement systems through the state. Does your software allow all of that information to be pulled together to give us the best possible direction going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why we do charge an implementation fee. And it is one of the reasons why we typically will do longer term agreements, usually a 3-year agreement with most of our clients, is because we we build out this whole product specifically for you. So there's elements of this that, yes, we use for all of our clients, but we build out a specific product around your pension and OPEB plans. So what we do essentially is, we get a data request of the information, all the stuff that goes into building your normal pension report. So all those same factors that you just mentioned, everything that goes into what your actuaries are looking for and what they're running reports on. We get all that information and we customize the software to fit specifically what your plan is. So that's the idea behind it.
And I see that Mark was going to chime in and say it was okay to drop the implementation fee.
Is that what you're going to say, Mark? Mark, are you there?
Mark was going to say that Brian nailed it. Is we built so much custom work, like as Lisa kind of touched on as well, and Lisa did a phenomenal job kind of explaining what we do. Is we do so much custom work for you specifically, and that's why there is an implementation fee.
But one thing I'll chime in on. So one thing we did negotiate with Lisa, just so you all know, because we knew we were kind of in the middle of the budget cycle. Typically, we do, the first year you need to pay the first year upfront. So we did negotiate so that because you're partially through the through your budget cycle right now, that we would split up those payments. So even though we're not requiring you to pay for the whole first year right now in the middle of your budget year, still providing the full service, not kind of going through the whole process without that.
Thanks, guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in sales. You don't get it if you don't ask for it.
Absolutely.
So a motion to approve the switching to I forget Government Nest for their the 3-year contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No discussion. All in favor? Nope. Did I miss something?
It's Len's teeth. I don't know what that crackling noise is, but it sounds like he's got those wind-up teeth that crackling.
He's cold.
No. That's the CIA is tapping my lines again.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly? Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguiar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Okay, thank you all for that. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Ms. Lasky, for the presentation. All right, moving on. Next item is we have correspondence.
Move to receive and place on file.
Second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguiar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have future meetings. Our January 24th is the joint Town Council School Committee meeting, followed by our February 14th and February 20th.
The 24th is a joint meeting to begin with, and then regular business afterwards on the
Yes.
building.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Kelly? And Mr. Aguiar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all. And I'll work on the green background. I'll
I
do the
was sort of
weather.
expecting better special effects, Kevin.
I'm sorry.
Shoot
I'm just-
lasers at the very least. I mean,
You're lucky I got my volume to work.